Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested, and today I'm going to be going in depth with a hands-on preview of Bigscreen Beyond, the upcoming VR headset from Bigscreen VR. This is their first foray into hardware. We got a first look at this back in February, and thanks to Bigscreen, they were able to loan me a development unit. So this is kind of a pre-production unit past the prototype phase, but I've been using this as my primary desktop VR device for the past month. And now that the embargo is up, I can share some thoughts, impressions, some looks through the lenses to give you a sense of the good, a little bit of the bad, and some of the weird or awkward features of this headset. So a little bit of a recap first. This is a desktop VR headset. So unlike the Quest 2 or Quest Pro, it does not run its own internal tracking. It doesn't have any processing power. It's a tethered wired headset that you plug into your gaming PC or your gaming laptop and run it through Steam VR. And that's where the tracking is based off of. So it does require an existing setup or a new Steam VR setup where you're going to be setting up base stations that you would have had with your Valve Index or your Vive Pro series of headsets, as well as compatible Steam VR controllers like the Knuckles controllers here. The headset itself is $1,000, and that's just this headset. It doesn't include any of the other tracking accessories, controllers, so it's really for people who either have a high-end gaming PC and want a really high-end desktop VR experience and ready to buy all the accessories, or people who want an upgrade, who maybe have a Valve Index, which was announced, over 4 years ago now, and have those accessories and want something better for visual fidelity as well as comfort. There are a couple features that make it unique, and not only the direction they went with, but also the technology they've adopted. And so first off, it's the displays. They're using micro OLED panels. This is the first VR headset I've used that has micro OLED panels. It's basically for each eye, 1 inch, very small, 1 inch diagonal OLED. So you got your deep blacks, your very quick, your pixel response times at a high resolution per eye. So 2560 by 2560 per eye, paired with some custom, very thin pancake optics that they use to make this as small as possible of a headset. So what that means is their field of view is close to 90 degrees, and that's going to, of course, differ based on people's face shape and how close they are to the actual lenses themselves. But based on a roughly 90-degree diagonal field of view, their pixels per degree, which is what we care about, is 28 pixels per degree. Much higher than the low 20s that you're getting in the Quest 2 and Quest Pro, higher than what you'd find in the HP Reverb G2, as well as the Vive Pro 2, because those have has a wider field of view, but not quite as high as the headset I tested, the Vario Aero, which had a maximum pixels per degree of 35 with its higher resolution display here. But that was also a much bigger headset and maybe targeted for a slightly different audience. The other thing that makes this unique is this custom facial interface. And so the way they've designed this, which is a bespoke headset made to order per user, is that you send them not only your IPD, which they then lock into place with a range of between 56 and 74 millimeters, but also you do a face scan. And so this requires that you have something like a modern iPhone with a LiDAR sensor, which you can, they say, borrow from a friend, or you can go to the Apple Store and you use a web app. They send you a link that you go, and then you, over a very short, about 5-minute process, scan your face, and that data gets sent to them where they're able to then model a facial interface that perfectly conforms to your face. And so you can see this is a custom-made face interface. Has even though the actual dimensions of it may be smaller than the facial interface that you'd find on like the Quest 2, it actually has more surface area contact. It touches more of your face, and because it is perfectly conformed, it holds your face structure very well. So it basically perfectly fits right here. It's a really interesting feeling because in past VR headsets I've used, you're really only feeling the pressure or the contact of a facial interface around like that kind of ski goggle look. So you have the classic VR face where when you remove a headset, you see the indentation or some red lines around your face. Here, you're not going to get that because it's literally pressing across your entire face, and that increased surface area contact means that it doesn't need to be as big and it also holds in place better. And when you're coupling that with the very small form factor and very lightweight design of this is 127 grams without the head strap, without the custom facial interface, up to about 180 grams is what mine is at, because every interface is going to be different. 180 grams is still super, super light for a VR headset. I mean, one interesting point of comparison, if you remove the head strap and you remove the gasket here, the headset by itself weighs less than a Quest 2 controller with batteries inside. So if you have a Quest 2 at home, pick up your controller. This headset weighs less than that. If you put in the facial interface, it's still very much around that weight, which is kind of mind-blowing. So those are the unique things. The custom form factor for users made to order, plus paired with this very small high resolution micro OLED display. Let's talk about the experience. And let's start with the good, because the clarity on this is tremendous. When I tested and reviewed the Vario Aero and ran that at that 35 ppd, I talked about in my review how it was transformative for games. Playing a game like Half-Life Alyx, it felt like a whole new experience. Not only was I more immersed, but seeing just the increased geometry detail, making the most out of that texture detail, everything in VR just felt more believable. And there were details I never knew, I never could see when playing on even a Valve Index, that because at that high resolution, once you pass like a threshold of something like the Reverb G2, things just start looking extra crisp. And at a 28 ppd, things are truly, truly crisp here. I replayed all of Half-Life Alyx, started Vertigo 2, and those games look so good in Bigscreen Beyond, including using a virtual desktop. So whether it's in Steam VR and throwing up the virtual desktop there, or running a virtual desktop in virtual desktop, or seeing your desktop in big screen, I could actually do basic tasks. I could type up entire Google Docs, my notes for this video, do web browsing. I could do very light video editing because the GPU was being taxed by running the headset itself, so couldn't really do a full video edit in Premiere. But all the UI and everything was readable. I could see room for improvement. I always want more. But here, the clarity at its sharpest point was something that felt really hard to step back from. Even going to something like a Quest Pro with its wide sweet spot, it was hard to go back to that after using Bigscreen Beyond for this past month. The micro OLED display here uses an RGB stripe sub-pixel arrangement, and so the pixel fill is high. And so when you're talking about things like screen door effect, I didn't notice any space between the pixels. There's no like grid lines that you can see, and which is a trait of modern displays and optics. But even at this high resolution, I could see a little bit of aliasing in some geometry. If you're looking at like thin lines, for example, the wires in the opening scene of Half-Life Alyx across City 17, you can see a little bit of aliasing, which can be compensated with some super sampling. But when you're running this at already a very high resolution, I'm running this at basically 100% scaling to match the frame rates needed for this. The colors and the contrasts were fantastic on this. Of course, with an OLED panel, you're getting deep blacks, and with something like a loading screen, the Valve logo that comes up at the opening of Alyx. Oh, it was just so nice to see something like those deep blacks. Now, something like the Quest Pro with local dimming on those mini LEDs, you can achieve closer to the black levels, but even with that enabled in the latest version of the Quest Pro, I still prefer the true black of the OLEDs on a pixel level. The dark scenes of Half-Life Alyx look so good, so much more terrifying. And then when you have, pockets of light glinting off your Russell gloves or the shotgun you're holding, that contrast was just really, really nice in this headset. But it's also about the comfort. So with this weight, with this visual interface, I was able to wear this for much longer than I could a Quest 2 or Quest Pro. And yes, there is no top strap here. It's just kind of the ski goggle strap, which worked fine for me actually. I'm wearing this with headphones on top of it, so over-the-ear headphones, which help keep the headset in place a little more. But something that was really nice is that I didn't even need to tighten this band because of the weight, because of the way it rests on my face. Yeah, as long as it was secure. I didn't need to feel like I need to pull it tight enough to have it press against my face. Actually, could have it not loose, but just comfortably sitting there in a secure way, which was very different than the head straps I'm used to, where I'm tightening it real close and pressing either a Halo head pad or a facial gasket right against my face. It was just so different to be able to wear this for long periods of time and not feel like I had this huge computer that was on my face. I could really just feel like I was more connected to the content. Now, everyone's face is going to be different, and because even at under 200 grams, that's still some weight. And so there is a little bit of downward pressure that you're going to feel. And so I feel that more for me on my nose, depending on what your face is shaped like. You might feel more of that on the edges of your eye, your brow, or something like that. And it's interesting that they chose this form factor because they have your face scan, and they could have chosen to have this custom print this custom face gasket be a larger piece, maybe more surface area, or shape more for the tops of your cheeks. But they chose this form factor for their manufacturing, and it works. But it will differ user to user for how this actually feels on your face. Other good things, the microphone quality, so there are stereo mics on the bottom here, is pretty good. And using this playing a game of Demio, people were actually pretty impressed by how this sounded like. It actually sounds better, I think, than the Quest Pro. You can actually hear right now the audio that I'm recording right now is coming from the Bigscreen Beyond, and I can switch back to now my lav mic. So compared to a dedicated mic, actually works really well. All right, so the clarity, the comfort, that's the good. That makes me love being in VR with this headset. It's kind of renewed my love for PC VR after spending so long these past couple of years on mobile VR with the Quest 2 and now Quest Pro. I'm playing with, when there's a game that I could play, a cross-platform game, something like Pavlov. I'm feeling like I'm going back to the PC version over Pavlov Shack, over the PSVR 2 version. The PC version with Bigscreen Beyond just feels like a much better experience. Really a night and day experience from the low resolution LCD headsets that I've used more recently. But there are some caveats to this. And with the long-term use, there are some things that I'm going to be nitpicky about because of the way they've designed the panels they've chosen and the pancake lenses they've developed. They are locked to that 90-degree field of view. And when you remove the facial interface, if I press my eyeballs right up to the lenses, you could get slightly higher than that 90-degree field of view. And so this distance here they've chosen, which partially they have to have because there is an embedded piece of plastic in this material where the magnets are attached to. This distance, I feel like, could be minimized, or they should give users maybe the option to have that minimalized because you can't have any custom eye relief. This is kind of a fixed headset. The distance between your eyes and this headset is locked based on their manufacturer of this facial interface as well as their locked IPD settings here. And with these pancake lenses, while they are very sharp in the center, both the sweet spot and the eye box, I think, are fairly limited, especially compared to the Quest Pro. And first, the sweet spot. So, how much adjustment you need to make for finding a clear center of crispness. That feels like is mitigated a bit by the fact that they're customizing this to you. And so, as long as your IPD is right and as long as the face scan work, the sweet spot should be pretty automatic. Like the moment you put on the gasket, you're locked to where those lenses and where those panels are. And so you shouldn't be doing a lot of adjustment. That's what I found. So I'm not terribly concerned about the relatively small sweet spot, but I am a little bit concerned about the relatively small eye box. And that's how much you can move your eye around once the headset's in place to get edge to edge clarity. And while the center of that image is really clear, once you move your eyeball to the far left or the far right or top or bottom, you're going to notice some of that blurring, and it's not as sharp as the Quest Pro edge to edge. The biggest concern, though, I have is glare. And with OLED panels, with pancake lenses, because of the way they're bouncing the light through these layers of the pancake lenses, you could get artifacts like some doubling. And the way they've mitigated that is they kind of diffuse that a little bit, but you do see in high contrast scenes. So whether you're like, for example, if you're in a home cinema in big screen VR and you're watching a really bright screen where the rest of the environment, the theater, is dark, I did notice this glare that not exactly like a God rays. It wasn't like a straight line, but it was like a floating glare that was closer to my face in my eye than it was than the image. And because the rendered plane of focus is at a fixed distance away from your face, it felt like smudgy glasses. Is kind of a good example. I have lights coming in my glass right now, and if there are smudges right now, and I move my head around, I'm gonna notice a little bit of glare of that light right in front, and it was kind of jarring to see a crisp image in kind of a fixed distance or focus to infinity, but also when I'm watching a movie, having or looking around, I could see that glare kind of floating around as I was moving my head around. If the scene you're in is uniform brightness and bright, then the glare is not noticeable. I did get used to it over time, but watching a movie, it is for first time users of this, it's going to be pretty noticeable. And because I'm using a prescription lens insert, so my glasses definitely don't fit in here. They're not made to be worn with glasses. Bigscreen will sell these magnetically attached inserts that you plugged in. I also found that insert tended to fog up a little more than the lenses itself. The fan system here I think is pretty good, not only keeping the display cool, but also keeping the pancake lenses not fogged. But this additional prescription lens did end up, I did need to take off the headset from time to time to wipe that clear of some condensation. And so if you have the option, if you wear contacts, this would be a headset where I would prefer wearing contacts over using the prescription inserts. Final little bit of nitpicking, the default head strap that comes with, you can route the cable in the back, but I think their cable routing solution isn't as secure as I'd like. This is a pretty beefy cable. It's a 5-meter fiber optic cable that you're plugging into their link box that then plugs into your computer over DisplayPort 1.4. And there were occasional times where this connection here popped out because the way it secures this cable to the head strap just isn't as secure as I'd like. The other thing is that there is some adjustment here for the angle, and while the facial interface means that you don't need to actually tilt the headset up and down, there's no benefit to tilting it up and down for clarity purposes because everyone's head shape is different. You're going to want to have the head strap adjusted for where your head is, like where the back of your skull is. And I wish that this was not a loose connection, but either kind of a ratcheted, clicky solution or something a little more firm. So if I have this locked in place, it doesn't tilt up and down and be loose. So I don't know if that's something they can fix in this pre-production unit by the time they get to production, but it was a thing that I noticed. But they also will be selling a hard head strap with built-in speakers, so maybe that's something to use instead of this soft strap. All right, let's also then get to the kind of awkward or weird features. And something that I haven't seen people mention is while this is a 90 hertz panel, its default actually is 75 hertz. And this becomes a limitation when you're talking about high resolution VR headsets that we haven't really considered with DisplayPort 1.4. And because of the maximum bandwidth of the DisplayPort protocol, when you're running at 2560 by 2560 per eye at high refresh rates, you're only able, even with display stream compression, able to get full native res across this cable when you're running at 75 hertz. There is an option to run at 90 hertz, and right now it's a separate utility. Bigscreen says they're working with Valve to have this built into Steam VR, so right in Steam you can swap it to 90 hertz, but at 90 hertz the headset actually is only accepting a 1920 by 1920 signal. So the GPU output is going to be actually compressed down to 1920 by 1920 per eye, sent through display stream compression DSC to the headset, and then that gets upscaled to the native resolution of 2560 by 2560. And it looks good at 90 hertz. It looks good with that upscaling, but for me, it is noticeable. The difference between the crispness of the image at 75 hertz at full res, native res, and the upscaled version at 90 hertz, I actually prefer staying at 75 hertz. And even though that's lower than your Valve Index, and this doesn't even go up to 120 hertz, because they're OLED panels, the low pixel response time made it actually comfortable for me to use at 75 hertz. Now, I've seen some gripes about the persistence of the image, and for me, I didn't notice any ghosting or blurring either at 75 hertz or 90 hertz, so the persistence was fine for me, but some people might want to decrease the brightness if they're going to have persistence issues, which will be a separate utility that Bigscreen will put out for you to adjust brightness and also the fan speed curve. Speaking of brightness, this is also not a very bright headset because they're using pancake optics and polarization, and they're bouncing this light back and forth. You're losing a lot of brightness through the pancake optics. And so compared to recently, even the PSVR 2, I was noticing that scenes just weren't daylight scenes. Walking around City 17 and Half-Life Alyx, it wasn't as bright. I got used to it because the contrast is so nice and colors are so vibrant, and there are no things like Mira, but it's not anywhere near the HDR quality that we aspire to with this, which may just be a consequence of using this type of panel with this type of pancake optics. I'm not sure it's something that they can improve, and so it's a consideration going forward. The thing we'll be looking out for as other manufacturers might be adopting micro OLEDs as well. And that's really the big question with this. I think it's at $1,000. If you have a Valve Index setup right now, it's going to be a life-changing improvement. The comfort, the ability to use this for long periods of time, the clarity. If you have base station setups, if you have Valve Index controllers, it feels like a no-brainer upgrade. If you do a lot of sim games, if you want to re-experience Half-Life Alyx, if you're in VR chat for long periods of time. The question is, if this is the first of these generation of headsets that are going to use micro OLED panels, what else is going to be coming down the pipeline? Who else is going to be using micro OLED panels? Are there going to be micro OLED panels and lens combinations where they might choose a different set of trade-offs? They might use not pancake optics and get a brighter or wider field of view. They might use a bigger micro OLED panel for maybe decreased pixel density, but again, a wider field of view. We're not sure what this next generation of headsets are going to encompass. But I'm fairly confident that no one's going to be taking on what Bigscreen's doing with making this bespoke, custom facial interface and targeting just this ultra low weight and comfortable form factor. That feels like a thing that's unique to their approach. And so even if panels might be improving and optics might be improving over time, and we're at the beginning of this next generation of headsets, there isn't that fear that someone's going to copy Big Screen's approach and make this feel obsolete anytime in the near future. It is really curious for us to see what a micro OLED panel can deliver today, and it does make me excited for the future of PC VR as they are pursuing a category that Meta and even Valve haven't really made improvements on in the past couple of years. This dedicated PC VR headset, and it really, like I said, the comfort and clarity really making me fall back in love with PC VR, where the hardware has kind of been stagnant for the past couple of years. So I'm really excited for other people to try it out and see what the production, actual shipping product is going to look like, see what that head strap, hard head strap and speaker accessory will look like, and what other software improvements they might make. And like I said, I really want them to do a 3DOF solution where you can plug this into a laptop and use it just as a productivity device or media viewing device. That's something that would make this go a long way to making adding extra value to Big Screen Beyond. If you have questions about this, I'm still holding on to the headset before returning it to Big Screen. So please let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.